For centuries, it has been well known that epidemic diseases follow the lines of commerce and travel. During colonial times and in the early days of our republic, the introduction of yellow fever, smallpox, cholera, and other diseases from foreign countries by ships was by no means uncommon. Epidemics of yellow fever from this source occurred as late as 1798 in New York, in Baltimore as late as 1832, and in Philadelphia as late as 1853. Many outbreaks of smallpox and cholera were the result of cases brought in by vessels. The danger of introduction of diseases from abroad has paralleled in growth the remarkable development of transportation on the sea, on the land, and in the air. The transportation of disease has been as much facilitated by improved mechanical methods as has the transportation of persons or property. Maritime quarantine was at first undertaken by the states and cities, but is now administered by the Public Health Service at all the ports of the United States and its possessions. To perform these functions, the service has been given quarantine jurisdiction over all ships and all persons, both citizens and aliens, coming into American ports from abroad. In its quarantine work, the United States Public Health Service maintains a fleet of trim and speedy boarding tugs, which carry the quarantine officers out to the vessels arriving at United States ports. When a vessel arrives at quarantine, the medical quarantine officer, a nurse, and an inspector go out to it in one of these boarding tugs so well known to seamen and ocean travelers. They draw alongside the vessel and go aboard. The quarantine officer meets the ship's doctor and the purser. The purser turns over to him certain records of the vessel's voyage for inspection, especially the bill of health and the health record en route, which shows all cases of illness occurring on board during the trip. The list here shows a suspicious case of illness in a member of the crew. Let's see now what happens. The quarantine officer is taken to the sick bay in the crew's quarters to examine the patient. His experience and training in the detection of the symptoms of rare as well as the common diseases tells him that this patient is suffering from typhus fever. He orders the patient to be removed from the vessel. And put aboard the quarantine tug to be taken ashore. All persons who have been in contact with the patient and thus have been exposed to the disease are also ordered on board the tug. The patient and the contacts are taken to the detention hospital, in this instance, Hoffman Island in New York Harbor. On their arrival, the sick patient is taken directly to the hospital. Here he is given appropriate treatment and cared for until he is recovered. Every facility is made available in such cases, both for the benefit of the patient himself and for the protection of others. As this happens to be a case of old world typhus fever, which is known to be spread by the body louse, the contacts, those who have had association with the patient during the voyage, are first taken to the delousing plant. Here they must remove all of their clothing. Thoroughly sprayed with soap and water. Next, they are sent under the showers. And finally, each one is sprayed with an insecticide that kills any lice or nits that may still remain in their hair. The clothing of these contacts is placed in net bags, and these bags are sent to the fumigating room. This clothing, together with the baggage of the contact, is placed in fumigating chambers where it is thoroughly disinfested. If necessary, the contacts are isolated in the detention hospital for observation. Every precaution is taken by the quarantine officers to prevent the introduction of disease into the United States. When the quarantine work has been completed and the ship declared free from danger, the medical officers of the Public Health Service then turn to the inspection of immigrants. This scene shows the well-known immigration station at Ellis Island, New York. During the busy period of a few years ago, more prospective citizens of this country arriving from abroad entered through this world-renowned station than through any other port of the country. In past years, thousands of aliens arrived at Ellis Island daily, and each one had to undergo an examination at the hands of the medical officers of the Public Health Service. In past times, too, many of them arrived only to be turned back at our very gates because of mental or physical defects. This was a necessary but somewhat cruel procedure and caused many heartaches, untold hardships, and much unnecessary expense. To avoid this condition, a new system was inaugurated by international consent in 1925, since which year intending immigrants have been examined in foreign countries by Public Health Service officers who are assigned to American consulates for this purpose. The prospective immigrant makes application through the American consul, who, if the applicant comes within the quota prescribed by Congress, arranges for an examination by the Public Health Service medical officer. If the applicant passes these physical and mental tests successfully, there is little chance that he'll be refused admittance later.
Each week, American History TV's Real America brings you archival films that provide context for today's public affairs issues.